The night was unusually still when the old oak tree in the backyard creaked under the weight of the wind, as though it carried a secret it had long refused to tell. The house itself seemed frozen in time, untouched since the day Richard Hale disappeared 15 years ago. A pair of worn leather boots still sat by the front, waiting. His wedding ring, tarnished with dust, remained in the porcelain dish beside the sink. And in the attic, where no one dared to climb, a small wooden box lay hidden beneath moth-eaten blankets, untouched. His children, now grown, had lived with the mystery of his absence all their adult lives. Whispers of betrayal, rumors of another woman, even speculation of foul play. But the truth had never surfaced. Not until that box was found, and when it was opened, nothing about their family would ever be the same again. What does it mean when the person who shaped your childhood suddenly disappears, leaving behind only questions instead of answers? And how do you reconcile the man you thought you knew with the stranger revealed by secrets you were never meant to uncover? Sometimes the most painful discovery is not that someone is gone, it's realizing they were never. The attic smelled of mildew and forgotten summers, the kind of scent that clings to the back of your throat and makes you hesitate before taking another breath. Anna Hale stood at the top of the narrow staircase, her hand trembling on the wooden beam, eyes fixed on the blanket-wrapped box. She hadn't planned to climb up there that night. In fact, she hadn't set foot in her childhood home since her mother's funeral 3 months earlier, but something had pulled her back. Some gnawing ache that whispered she had left unfinished. Her brother Michael, who had always hidden his pain behind cynicism, stood a few steps below, muttering about how ridiculous this was. "It's just junk, Anna. Mom kept everything. Old bills, receipts, even Dad's broken watches. Don't start building fairy tale in a dusty box." But Anna couldn't move. The box was small, barely larger than a shoebox, with a brass lock rusted from years of silence. It looked fragile, as though even touching it might cause it to splinter, and yet it radiated a strange weight, the kind that pressed against her chest. She kneeled, brushing the dust away, and felt the engraved initials, R8, the initials of the man who... Michael sighed and climbed the crouching beside. "Do you really want to do this?" His voice cracked for the first time. Beneath his hardened exterior, the boy who once idolized their father still lived, aching for answer. Anna's breath shuddered out of her. She whispered. The lock gave way with surprising ease, snapping open as though it had been waiting for this moment all along. Inside, carefully arranged, were letters bound by a faded blue ribbon, an old photograph folded at the end, and a small brass key. Anna reached for the photograph first. Her hand stilled when she saw it. A younger Richard Hale, not much older than 30, smiling beside a woman who wasn't there. The woman's hand rested on his chest, her head tilted toward him with unmistakable intimacy. On the back, in delicate handwriting, "To R. Forever yours, Claire." Michael swore under his breath, stumbling back until he hit the attic wall. No, that's not possible." His voice broke, anger and disbelief colliding inside him. Anna, gripping the photo as if it might vanish, opened the bundle of letters. They were love letters, spanning years, letters from this Claire. The words were tender, desperate, filled with promises of escape, of a future together. But then, hidden among them, was one different from the rest. The handwriting was Richard's. The date scrawled across the top chilled Anna's. It was written only 2 weeks before he disappeared. "Claire, I can't keep this secret any longer. They deserve the truth, even if it destroys everything. I'll tell them soon. No more hiding." Anna's vision blew. Her father had been on the edge of revealing everything, of dismantling the illusion of the family they thought they knew. And then, he was gone. Michael snatched the letter from her hand, reading it with clenched teeth. "So what are you saying? That he left us for her? That he was planning to run away and just didn't have the guts to say it?" But Anna's instincts whispered something darker. Why would a man about to confess suddenly vanish into thin air? She picked up the small brass key, feeling its sharp edges dig into her. It wasn't for a house door nor a car. It looked older, like a key to a lockbox or a safe. Anna looked at her brother, her voice trembling. "Michael, I think Dad left us. I think something..." The attic grew heavier with silence after Anna's words, as though the air itself understood the weight. Michael paced back and forth, his boots creaking against the old wooden floor, hands pressed against his head. He wanted to deny it, to bury it under years of resentment and pretend it... But the photograph and the letters were tangible, undeniable. Anna sat cross-legged with the box in her lap, reading the letters again and again, as if the more she looked, the more answers. Her heart beat so loudly she thought it might crack her ribs. 15 years of not knowing. 15 years of watching her mother fade into a shadow of herself. Never remarried, always... And now this. Proof he had lived. Still, something... "Do you remember that night?" Anna finally asked, her voice soft, hesitant. Michael stopped pacing. What night? The night Dad disappeared. Mom always said he went out for a drive after dinner. But I remember something else. I remember hearing voices. He was on the phone, shouting at someone. He slammed the receiver so hard I thought it cracked. Michael frowned, digging into his memory. Yeah, I do remember the shouting, but I thought it was just another fight with Mom. Anna shook her head. No, Mom was upstairs with me. Whoever he was talking to, it wasn't her. Michael sat down heavily on a dusty trunk. His jaw tightened. So you think what? That Claire woman was blackmailing him? That someone found out about them and... He didn't finish the sentence. Anna stared at the brass key, rolling it between her fingers. Whatever this opens, it's the missing piece. The following morning, Anna couldn't shake the unease clinging to her. She hadn't slept at all. The letters spread across the dining table like ghosts whispering in the dark. Michael had gone home saying he wanted no part of digging up the past, but Anna knew he'd be back. He was just too stubborn to admit it. She drove into town with the key in her purse, stopping by the only locksmith still operating, an old man named Carl, who had known their father. He squinted at the key through his thick glasses, rubbing it with a cloth as though it were an artifact. This is a bank key, he said slowly. Old style. Belongs to a safety deposit box, I'd bet. Haven't seen one like this in years. Anna's stomach twisted. Do you know which bank? Carl nodded. Harrison First National. That was your father's bank, wasn't it? Her pulse quickened. Yes, Richard Hale had done all his banking there. She remembered him taking them there as kids, letting them spin in the leather chairs while he signed papers, gripping the key tighter. Carl studied her face. Anna, if that key stayed hidden all these years, maybe it was meant. Be careful. The truth doesn't always heal. It cuts. That afternoon, Anna stood in the lobby of Harrison First National, the marble floors shining under sterile fluorescent light. Everything felt too modern, too cold compared to her childhood. A young clerk greeted her with polite detachment. She produced the key. His eyebrow. One moment, ma'am. Let me check. He disappeared into the back, leaving Anna twisting the strap of her. She could hear her father's voice in her head, low and steady, the way he always sounded when explaining something serious. Some things, Annie, you don't understand until you're older. One day you'll see. The clerk returned with a manager, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes. Ms. Hale? I'm Margaret. This key belongs to a deposit box registered under Richard Hale, but the account hasn't been accessed in over 15 years. Anna's throat. Can I open it? Margaret hesitated. Normally only the account holder, but given the circumstances, and if you can provide proof of relation, Anna slid her ID. He was my father. After a long pause, Margaret nodded. Follow me. The vault was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Margaret led Anna to a small box, tucked among hundreds of others. The brass key slid in with ease, as though the box had been waiting all this time. Anna's hands shook as she turned it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, thick and worn, its edges frayed. On top of it lay a single envelope, her name scrawled in Richard Hale's. Anna's knees buckled, and she had to grip the table to steady her. She hadn't seen his handwriting in 15 years. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. My dearest Anna, if you are reading this, then something has happened I could not prevent. There are things I never told you, things that put all of us in danger. You must be careful. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. The truth is darker than an affair, darker than betrayal. There are people who would kill to keep it buried. Please, protect your brother, protect your mother. Forgive me. Dad! Anna gasped, clutching the letter to her chest. Her father hadn't abandoned, been hunted. The journal sat beneath the letter, waiting. She reached for, heart pounding, when she felt a hand grip her shoulder. Anna spun around. Michael stood there, pale and furious. You went without me? His voice was low, dangerous. His eyes flicked to the journal. What the hell is that? Anna swallowed, holding the letter close. It's Dad's. He left it. Michael's jaw clenched, his body trembling with a mixture of rage and fear. Then read it, right now. Because I swear to God, if you're keeping secrets like he did... Anna opened the journal. The first page was dated 1990, and the words written there changed everything they thought they knew about their father. Anna's hands trembled as she flipped the first brittle page of the journal. The ink had faded in places, but her father's meticulous handwriting remained clear enough to read. Michael leaned in, arms crossed, his face a mask of suspicion that barely covered the fear. June 12th, 1990. They came to me again today. Same men, same suits, same veiled threats. They call it recruitment, but it feels more like blackmail. They know things about my past I thought buried. If I refuse, they say my family will pay the price. But if I agree, I'll be complicit in something I swore I'd never touch again. Anna's brow furrowed. What is this? He makes it sound like... She hesitated. Michael finished like Dad was involved in something illegal? She turned the page. June 30th, 1990. I followed him, the man they wanted me to watch, a banker named Doyle, connected to accounts that don't make sense. Offshore, I'm supposed to report back, but every step I take feels like another chain around my neck. If I walk away, they'll destroy me. If I stay, I'll become. God forgive me. I don't know which is worse. Anna felt her throat close. She remembered Doyle. Their father had mentioned him once in passing, always with a shadow in his eyes. Michael dragged a hand down his face. So he was spying on people? For who? The government? The mob? Anna whispered. Maybe both. As they flipped through the pages, the picture sharpened into something darker than either sibling could have imagined. October 5th, 1991. Claire doesn't understand. She thinks I'll leave everything behind for her, but she doesn't know how deep. I can't protect her. I can't protect my family. The walls are closing in, and I am running out of time. Michael shot to his feet, pacing it. Claire, that's her. The woman in the photo. So she did know him, but Dad was... What? Using her as cover? Or in love with her while running from these people? Anna It's not that simple. Look, she pointed the next entry. December 18th, 1990. They've given me an ultimatum. Deliver the documents or Anna and Michael won't live to see Chris. They know where my children sleep. I've hidden copies in. If anyone ever finds this journal, follow the... Anna's stomach dropped. A key. The same brass key that had led her. Her voice Dad wasn't cheating. He was hiding something. Something dangerous. Michael stared at her, his usual defiance faltering. So you're saying he didn't abandon us? He was protecting us? Anna clutched the journal to her chest. And whatever he was protecting us from might still be out there. They didn't notice the shadow moving in the corner of the vault hallway. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stood just beyond the frosted glass partition, watching. His expression was unreadable. His hand hovered near the inside of his jacket, or a gun. When Anna and Michael finally left the bank, clutching the journal like a lifeline, the man followed them outside, blending. That night, back at their childhood home, the storm finally broke. Rain lashed against the windows, lightning cutting jagged streaks. Anna spread the journal on the table, reading aloud while Michael poured himself drink out. March 2nd, 1990. If something happens to me, don't trust the police. Some of them are already compromised. Don't trust the bank. Don't trust anyone who comes asking questions. The only safe place is the cabin, the one your grandfather built. Everything will be explained. They froze. The cabin, Michael looked up sharply. In the woods, the one by Silver Lake. They hadn't been there since they were children. Their father used to take them fishing there, teaching them how to bait hooks and build campfires. Their mother had always hated the place. Too remote, too full of memories she didn't want to relive. Anna whispered, "He left something for us there." Michael slammed his glass down, shards scattering across the table. Or he led whoever was after him straight to it. Don't you get it, Anna? If this journal is real, Dad was neck-deep in something deadly. And now we're neck-deep too. Anna's voice was steady, even though fear churned in her gut. We have to go. If Dad risked everything to leave us clues, we can't stop now. The next morning, they packed the car in silence. The journal lay between them on the seat, the weight of it pressing down harder than any suit. The drive to Silver Lake was long, winding through pine forest that seemed to lean closer the further. Halfway there, Anna caught sight of a black SUV in the rearview. It had been behind them since they left town, keeping its distance but never falling away. Michael, she said. He followed her gaze, his jaw tightening. Don't panic. Just keep driving. But Anna's hands tightened the wheel. Her father's words echoed in, don't trust. And when they finally reached the cabin, it was exactly as they remembered. Weathered wood, moss creeping up the stone chimney, shutters hanging crooked. But there was something different, something menacing about the silence surrounding it. Inside, dust coated every surface. The air smelled of damp wood and rot. Michael kicked at the floorboards while Anna searched the shelves. The journal mentioned documents, but nothing obvious was in sight. Then, under the old rug by the fireplace, Anna found a loose board. Her heart raced as she pried it up. Beneath was a metal box, small but heavy. She and Michael exchanged a glance before she lifted it out. The lock was rusted, but the brass key fit perfect. Inside were stacks of papers, photographs, and rolls of microfilm. Anna pulled one document free and felt her stomach lurch. It was a bank transfer. Millions of dollars moved between offshore accounts, all signed under false names. Among them, one name leapt off the page, Claire Whitmore. Michael swore under his breath. She was in on it, but Anna's eyes locked on something else, an envelope at the bottom of the box. She opened it to find a photo of their father, bruised and bloodied, bound to a chair. On the back, scrawled in hurried handwriting, were the words, "Tell them nothing, or they die." The room seemed to spin. Michael grabbed the photo, his face pale. "Jesus Christ, Dad wasn't hiding. He was taken," Anna whispered, "and whoever took him knew about us." At that moment, the cabin window shattered. A bullet whistled past Anna's ear, lodging in the wall. Michael tackled her to the floor as footsteps crunched outside. They weren't alone. Glass still tinkled from the broken window when Michael's shoulder slammed into Anna and drove her behind the heavy oak table. Another shot cracked through the storm-roaring air, biting a splinter out of the chair where her head had been a breath before. The smell of cordite mingled with damp wood and old dust, metallic and sharp, the way terror has a taste. "Back room," Michael hissed, his mouth near her. "There's a crawl space. Dad used to stash tackle boxes there." Anna's fingers were already scrabbling for the paper. She scooped the microfilm canisters into the metal box, shoved the damning photo inside, and hugged the journal. Michael grabbed the lid and clapped it shut as a dark figure swept past the shattered black raincoat, a cap pulled low, the brief shimmer of something steel at his hip. The door exploded inward. A man in a soaked windbreaker stepped through with the certainty of someone who knew the floor plan. His face was rough-hewn, a tight V of pale scar cutting across. The tall watcher from the bank had not been a shadow after all. Michael yanked Anna to her feet and pushed her toward the back hall. Boots hammered the porch. Another man came around the side, shouting over the storm, "Rear's covered!" Anna reached the narrow pantry just as the first man fired. Glass rained down from a cabinet. Jam jars burst like grenades of sweetness and shards. She dropped to her knees and felt under the bottom shelf for the notch in the baseboard. The thing only a child playing hide-and-seek or a man building secrets would. Wood shifted. Cold air breathed up from the dark. Michael shoved her through the gap. The opening was mean and tight. Old cobwebs brushed her face. Damp earth pressed against her. She slithered forward until space opened beneath the pantry floor. Michael slid in behind, dragging the metal box, then pulled the panel into place with a soft click, swallowed by thunder. They lay flat and listened. Floorboards groaned above. The men moved like they were reading a map. Quick sweeps, purposeful pauses. A flashlight beam pierced between the boards, a white blade in the dark that slit across Anna's fingers. She held her breath till her lungs. "Nothing," one of them said. "But they were here," Scar's voice answered, closer than she wanted to imagine. "They are here. The car is warm. Find the stash. He wouldn't bring them without it." A drawer dumped. Paper skittered across the floor. A chair shoved. Another step over the pantry. The hidden panel stayed still under Michael's braced palm. Anna's heart battered her ribs. She thought absurdly of her father teaching her to tuck the edges of a hospital corner when making a bed, to do every little thing so cleanly that it could be inspected and remain invisible. She tasted grief like brine. A phone vibrated above them, the sound oddly intimate in the quiet. Scar answered. "We have contact." The key led them to the cabin. "Yes, just like you said." "No, not yet. We'll flush them, like you." The words settled in Anna's mind like iron filings finding a magnet. They moved again. One of the men whistled low. "You're going to want to see this." A pause, long enough for rain to mark time on the roof. Scar spoke again, colder. "Bag it all. Burn the rest." The match smell reached them before the heat did. Michael cursed under his breath. Fire learned the cabin the way a predator learns a body, finding dry places, tasting old boards, catching at curtains. Smoke filtered into the crawl space and pinched their throats. Michael's mouth brushed Anna's ear. "Tunnel! Granddad's tunnel! Left of the furnace." They wriggled along the cramped dirt corridor, the way outlined in half-memory and tactile cues. A rough patch where tree roots had once thrust, a trickle of groundwater. The sudden wideness of their grandfather's stubborn afternoons with a shovel had opened enough space to store jars of peaches during a long winter. The furnace bulked to their right, a cold iron. Michael's hand slid over stone, found a seam, pressed. The wall gave inward with the grudging relief of old hinges. Air moved, wet, pine-flavored air. Anna dragged herself forward. The journal clamped to her like skin. Behind them the house crackled and settled into flame. A beam above their tunnel groaned. Soil dusted their backs. They spilled into a shallow depression hidden by boulder and fern. Rain made the world feel rinsed and loud. Smoke shouldered into the treetops and dissolved. Michael had the sense to grab a tarp and 2 rotted life jackets from a low rock shelf their grandfather had stashed things decades ago. He pointed downhill. The boathouse. They ran bent up, feeling 12 and hunted, feeling 38 and beyond exhausted, the way grief eats time, and roots reached for their ankle. The lake met them as a bruise-colored oval, thunder filing its edges. The old boathouse hunched at the shore like a memory that refused to leave. Inside, the air smelled of algae and creosote. Their grandfather's rowboat still hung from ropes, tarp-wrapped. Michael let it thump into the water. Distantly, a siren, not police, a generator horn, or the false lament of a radio they weren't meant to trust. They pushed off with hands and oars and fear. Rain sniped the lake. The boathouse door swung in their wake like a goodbye. Mid-lake, Anna looked back. Fire chewed the cabin. Orange teeth bit the roof. Figures stood against the fireglow as silhouettes. One of them raised an arm. For a moment she thought he waved. Then the lake near the boat ticked and spat. Bullets punctured water with obscene neatness. Michael dug at the oars. The boat leapt. The far shore crawled closer like a promise you couldn't be sure of. They grounded in reeds and dragged the boat into Cathay until it vanished. The path that led to the county road was the kind of path children and adults forgot. They didn't forget it. They followed it like a vein to the pulse of asphalt. Under the cover of dripping pines, they knelt, chest heaving. "We can't go back to town," Hale said. "They were waiting at the bank. They followed us from the house. Every obvious place is a trap." Anna wiped rain from her face with hands left mud-streaked. "We need to see what's on the film. If we know what Dad knew, we stop running blind." Michael's jaw flexed. "Library?" "The university has a microfilm reader. Harrison County College." She remembered sitting there as a teenager pretending to study while watching a boy with ink-stained fingers. She remembered the librarian who had let her stay late because quiet is a kindness. The car, burned or watched. They stared at the two rectangles of cold road extending to opposite horizon. "Cut through the marsh to Route 17. Hitch a ride at Miller's farm. Old man Miller still runs the stand." Anna's father's letter whispered like breath. "Trust no one, not even those closest to you." She made herself look at Michael fully. Rain had plastered his hair to his skull. He was shivering from cold or adrenaline or the way childhood cracks under the weight of a new story. He had been her bully and her defender, the idiot who taught her to climb too high trees, and the patient brother who held the flashlight while she dissected the guts of a radio. If she couldn't trust him, there was nothing left to stand. "We go together. We watch each other's blind spot. We don't use phones. We don't give our real names." He tried for it. What came was brittle. "Mom always said you were the stubborn one. She said that about you. She said it about both of us." They rose and moved through the hush that follows thunder. At Miller's farm, the stand was open, because it was always Mr. Dutch. Miller had aged into the kind of man who looked carved out of the soil he presided over. Wide hands, a face like baked clay, eyes that had watched 20s become 50s, come 70s. He glanced up as they approached, waded through their soaked forms, and didn't ask a single question. "Truck's headed in," he said instead, tipping his chin toward the lane. "Edgar's boy. He can drop you by the college. Rain's ruined the tomatoes. It's ruined your day too. Might as well let it be good for something." They climbed into the back of the pickup. Crates of corn rattled against their thighs. The tarp flapped and drummed. The driver, a kid with a jawline too serious for his age, didn't look at them when he said, "Storm like this? You could walk through town with a flaming torch and nobody'd notice." Anna thought of the cabin. She wondered if that was true. They got off 2 blocks from Harrison County College. Michael slipped the kid a 50 from a money clip their father had once told him never to carry. The kid shoved it back into Michael's fist without looking. "You didn't get in my truck, and I didn't see you get out." The library was a box of light in the gray, the kind of sanctuary that knows it's holy. Inside, they dripped onto a floor that smelled like lemon oil and paper. The front desk sat empty except for a bell and a small sign asking people to be kind to one. A man in a cardigan glanced up from a stack of returns. His hair was white thin and his glasses had that perpetually sliding quality, as though everything in the world was a fraction off-center. "Can I help you?" he asked in the tone of someone who had decided to be gentle no matter what the world. "We need the archives," Anna said. "Microfilm. Defunct technology," he murmured and stood. "Good news for you. I never throw anything away." He led them to a back room where old machines hummed like sleeping cats. While Michael guarded the door, Anna fed the first roll of film into the reader. The screen bloomed with blocks of type and ledger grids. It was not a newspaper spool. It was a record, names, numbers, transfers. Some frames had been shot from a distance, angles skewed, as if a camera hidden inside a briefcase had glimpsed them for a second before a page turned. She scrolled, hands steadier than she felt. Harrison First National, the Perrin Foundation, Northridge Consulting, names interlaced like threads in a rug. Columns of figures ran into 7 digits and then simply kept climbing, and there, her breath halted, There was Claire Whitmore again, this time not on a romance note, but as signatory to multiple fund movements tagged Education Grant Dispersal. Education grants that never reached any school on the list. She knew because the schools were impossible. One was a demolished elementary in a neighboring town. Another was a P.O. box, a cheerful cartoon apple. Another was simply listed as District Reserve, a phrase that meant more when it didn't mean anything. Michael leaned over. She used her name. Or someone wanted that name seen, Anna said. If you create a ghost, you give it a shadow. People are comforted by paperwork. He grunted. You sound like Dad. Her finger stopped at a frame stamped with a date, 2 weeks before Richard Hale vanished. A transfer of $3.5 million out of an account named Doyle Family Trust into Northridge Consulting, authorized by, her stomach dropped, M. Hale. Michael's voice went rough. That's not, it can't be you. It was before you turned 18. Then who? Dad, Anna said softly. He used your name. The next frame was worse, a signature that could pass for his if you squinted. A note at the bottom, for disbursement per State Development Committee recommendation. State development, Michael said. That's politics. And contracts, roads, schools, power grids, money that flows like rivers where no one sees the underground. The librarian cleared his throat quietly, a human punctuation mark. Sometimes, he said, an apology laced through every syllable. Curiosity brings unwelcome company. Michael stiffened. Anna lifted her eyes. At the doorway, 2 campus security officers had appeared, yellow raincoats, radios clipped to shoulders, hands in relaxed positions that had very little to do with relaxation. Behind them, a woman in a navy suit watched, dry despite the storm, her hair perfectly arranged for the wrong weather. Anna Hale, she said gently. Michael Hale. I'm Special Agent Miriam Cole with the State Attorney's Office. We've been trying to reach you. Anna looked at the microfilm screen, then at the woman, then at the librarian, who seemed ready to evaporate rather than make trouble exist in his quiet room. Michael's laugh was too loud. State Attorney? That's convenient. What do you want, Agent Cole? Our autograph on a confession we haven't read yet? Agent Cole's gaze flicked to the screen. If what she felt was surprise, she smothered it well. What I want is to keep you alive. Your father was a confidential informant. He was working with us. And if you don't come with me now, you won't live through the night. For a second, the room tipped, gravity ducking out for a smoke. Anna steadied herself on the machine. My father was... What? Agent Cole stepped fully into the room and motioned the security officers back as if to say, See? I don't need muscle to be inevitable. He approached the state attorney's office in 1990. A banker named Doyle was laundering funds through dummy charities, education grants, infrastructure slush, anything that looked good in a brochure. Your father had access and a conscience. He fed us ledgers, photos, names. Then the operation leaked. We lost him, or we were told to. By who? He didn't hide the anger. He rolled it in. Who told you to stand down while our family fell apart? Cole's mouth thinned. The orders came from above my pay grade. They always do. I'm not here to litigate the past, Mr. Hale. I'm here to get you out of the line of fire now. Anna wanted to believe her. She wanted not to. Her father's letter crawled up her spine. Don't trust the police. Some of them are already compromised. How did you even find us? She asked. We didn't use our phones. We didn't. You used your faces. Cole's sigh landed somewhere between admiration and annoyance. There are cameras at the bank, at the farm stand, on Highway 17. The world watches everything. Also, when a cabin goes up in flames in a state forest, people make calls. Did you put Scar at the bank? Michael shot back. The man with the face that looks like a road map? Cole's eyes sharpened. Scar? The man who burned our house. The man who followed us. He answered a call in our kitchen and said, just like you said, I didn't put anyone at the bank. But Margaret Klein did. The manager who handed you the box. She's one of Doyle's. She's been one of Doyle's since the beginning. The librarian made a small sound. Margaret? She volunteers here on Thursdays. I'm sure she alphabetizes beautifully, Cole replied. And I'm sure she'll do it again when she's posted at county lockup, if we make it that far. Come on, now. Michael, how do we know you're not with them? Cole looked tired in a way that went beyond sleep and calendar. You don't. You can't. I can tell you that the scar-faced man you mentioned is named Owen Vance, former private security turned fixer for hire. He flips allegiance like a coin. He won't stop. If you stay, he'll come through those doors and put 2 neat holes in both of you before I finish asking the librarian to forgive me for raising my... The librarian lifted his hands as if settling a bird. I've survived freshman orientation for 30 years, he said mildly. Raised voices can be tolerated. Anna's hand closed on the journal's leather like a prayer. She thought of her mother's quiet grief, of 15 years of thinking her father had chosen to leave. She thought of the photo of him, tied to a chair, bruised and still alive. A part of her that had refused to die flared like a match under damp twigs. "We go," she said. They moved. Cole took point, the security officers flanking. The librarian touched Anna's sleeve as she passed. "If books have taught me anything, it's that sometimes the villain is the person who smiles with all the right teeth. If you need to return, use the staff door. My name's Harold." "Thank you," Anna said, and meant it so much they cut through stacks of biographies and into the... Cole hustled them into a gray sedan with no marking and too clean and... "Heads down," she said, and drove as if the law were an obstacle. The wipers fought drizzle. Campus blurred into town. "You said my father was working with you," Anna said, the words hard to get out around the tightness in her throat. "So what happened to him? Where is he?" Cole kept her eyes on the road, jaw working. "Officially, he ran. Unofficially, he was taken after a meet went bad at a storage depot outside Hale Ridge. Taken by who? By the same men moving money through your town like it was empty and theirs. By Doyle's people. By politicians who never learned how to build anything except debts owed. Pick a name. It is always the same machine. Is he? Anna couldn't say it. "I don't know," said softly. "I wasn't in charge then. I am now, in a narrow corner and in my narrow corner, you are going to live long enough to decide what to do with what he left." "What he left us? You mean grief and a ledger of enemies? And a kill switch?" If he was smart, he made one. They merged onto Route 9. Headlights poured and pooled. A truck horn barked at a lane change someone regretted a beat late. For a while the only sound was tires negotiating wall. "Tell me about Claire Whitmore," Anna said. Cole didn't answer him. When she did, it was with care. She was handling glass. Claire was a teacher. Doyle recruited her college roommate into the charity finance arm. When that roommate began asking questions, she disappeared. Claire got angry instead of scared. She came to us. We used her to get close to Doyle's accounts. She got too close to your father, or he got too close to her. Both were true. She wasn't just an affair, Anna said. She was involved. She was brave, Cole said. Those are not synonyms, but sometimes they are. The transfers with her name? Cover some, real some. She took risks that looked dirty on paper and clean in the heart. That's why paper can't be the only truth. Michael scrubbed his... Where is she now? Dead. 12 years. Car accident that didn't make the front page. The road stretched and narrowed at once, the way grief makes time a trick. Anna pressed the journal to her ribs and felt, for a second, like her father's heartbeat might still be there, slow and stubborn. If a kill switch existed, it lived somewhere in his line. Cole took an exit that most people didn't notice and coiled down into the basement of a municipal building insulated by bureaucracy. She parked, killed the lights, and sat in silence as if waiting for the past. "We can't go to the station. Phone's there, gossip, but there's a room here I use when I don't want to be found. We'll dry off, eat something without asking what animal it used to be, and you'll show me what you have." They followed her through a door that looked like it led to a broom closet and down a hallway that owed its life to emergency lighting. The room at the end had a table, a coffee maker, and the sense of being unlisted. Anna spread the contents of the metal box. Cole paged through the documents with careful hands. She slowed at one grainy photo and exhaled a single syllable that could have been a prayer or a curse. "There," she said. "There's your kill switch." The photo showed 4 men at a charity gala. Suits, champagne, a banner that said, "Perrin Foundation Annual Dinner. Our children, our future." Richard Hale stood near the edge of the frame, not smiling, eyes on someone beyond the camera. Next to him, Doyle. Next to Doyle, a state senator who had turned into something larger since, face clipped into every billboard, speeches printed in brochures, promises made in letters to donors. And next to the senator, a man Anna didn't recognize, all polish and teeth. Cole tapped the unknown man. "Leland Grant," she said. "Back then he was a contractor. Now he's in charge of awarding the kinds of projects that make millionaires into benefactors and benefactors into..." "So?" Michael said, toes right over a line he knew was meaningless. "It's a photo." "It's more," Cole said, flipping to another page, one of the ledgers. She brought the two side by side, like a magician revealing not a trick but the kind of arithmetic that gets people buried. The ledger shows a disbursement to Northridge Consulting the week after this gala. Grant owned Northridge through a shell before he divested, quotation marks required. The gala is where the promise was made. The transfer is where the promise was kept. Your father documented the promise being kept while the promise was being made. Anna's head felt light, like she'd stood up too fast. "If we release this, they'll smear you," Cole said. They'll call your father a cheat who raised dishonest children. They'll say the photo is a dinner, not a conspiracy. They'll say the ledger is doctored. Truth doesn't win on volume, it wins on proof. We need something undeniable, something spoken by the right mouth. The journal lay open under Anna's hand. The paper wavered, a trick of breath. She turned to the back, where the spine had cracked a little more from a small envelope was pasted into the cover by a loop of yellowing tape, like an afterthought that was waiting to be remembered. For Anna, the front read her father's. Her fingers she slit the envelope with the edge of a library card Harold had pressed on at the last second, like a talisman. Inside was a piece of photo paper, glossy, the kind you developed in a dark room because you didn't trust machines. Except it wasn't a photo. It was a strip of magnetic tape, narrow and adhesive backing pressed to the photo paper. A microcassette. He glued it to hide it. Cole's eyes met Anna. Do you know anyone with an old recorder? Anna Dancer. She was back in a dim room, 13, elbows on her father's workbench, while he taught her how to strip wire and twist it without breaking the copper. She was listening to him tell her that new doesn't mean better, it just means new, and that sometimes the only way to keep a thing safe for the world thinks it. She was remembering a box of obsolete electronics beneath the stairs that her mother would never have thrown away because throwing away your husband's last mess was admitting he wasn't coming back. The house, she said, the word hitching like a wheel over a rut. If the fire didn't take it, the house is gone, Michael said flatly. Not that house, Anna replied. Mom's house, the suburban one, the boxes in the garage. She kept everything. Cole stood. Let's go shopping at a museum. They were halfway to the door when the overhead bulb popped and darkness folded over them. Cole's gun was in her hand before the last glass tinkled to the floor. The emergency strip stuttered, tried to glow, died. A voice floated down the hall, conversational, foreign to the building, and utterly at ease. Agent Cole? The door was open. I told you your locks were metaphorical. Owen Vance stepped into the weak light thrown by the machine room's glass panel. The scar on his cheek caught what brightness existed and made it something to look at if you wanted to look anywhere but his eyes. Anna felt the room shrink. Michael slid slightly in front of her in a move that had always been both foolish and necessary. Cole didn't lift the gun higher. She held it at that casual angle professionals use when their next move could be a bullet or a sigh. Mr. Vance, she said, you look damp. I'm adaptable and punctual, and I like to resolve ambiguity. You have something I need. Which is? The children, as if picking the less offensive, and the things their father left. Why? Anna asked, surprising herself with how level it. To bury the past? Or to price it? Both. I'm a businessman. Cole's smile didn't. Funny. You strike me as an ending, Vance. I'm many things. Today I am a courier for people who don't want their names in your file folder. Step aside. Nobody moved. He sighed and lifted 2 fingers. Behind him a second shape peeled out of shadow. A woman, lithe and trim, hair in a slick knot, eyes like fresh asphalt. She held a small device in one hand that blinked red, then green, then red again, as if think. Jammer? Cole said quietly. Phones are dead, as are cameras, Vance agreed. Viewer, so there will be no record of a tragic electrical fire in a municipal basement during a storm, or of the heroic agent who tried to lead 2 confused citizens to safety and failed. Anna looked at the journal, at the strip of tape that might hold her father's voice. She let it. At the woman who had walked into a trap and offered them a path anyway. Circuits soldered themselves in her mind. Connections, finding connection. She reached for something at the edge of memory. Dad used to hide a spare key at the, she said soft, watching Vance the way you watch a rattlesnake. Under the 3rd riser of the back stair. He said the 3rd thing is the one people never check because they assume if you've hidden one, it's at the 1st. People are lazy. Michael blinked and caught it. Which is why this room probably has 3 exits. Cole's 2, she said, but one of them is the kind that only opens if you hate OSHA, and I do. She dropped to a knee and ran her hand along the baseboard, found a seam that didn't match paint, and yanked. A panel popped. Stale air kissed their ankle. Vance watched. You could run. You could try. Or, and this is just business, you could give me the journal and the tape and keep your lungs. Anna felt something harden inside her, a small, bright thing that had not been permitted to grow, because childhood had been a place where rules outweighed. She met Vance's eye. My father taught me how to run. He also taught me when not to. She grabbed the metal box and dove through the opening. Michael shoved the table to Vance. Not as a barricade, nothing would stop him. Cole fired twice, not to hit, but to make a point. Bullets punched drywall. Vance stepped back with that offended elegance men. They think their suits. They slid into a maintenance crawl, the kind of forgotten passage cities grow the way trees grow rings. Pipes sweated. Air smelled of dust and something ancient. Behind them, Vance laughed, a sound without humor that still managed to entertain itself. Run. It gives the story rhythm. Cole led them through angles that made no sense to people who believed buildings obeyed geometry. They squeezed past a seam that sang under there and spilled into a stairwell used by no one, because to use it would require knowing it existed. Up 2 flights, across a landing, through another door into the rain-drowned. They didn't stop until the car had swallowed them, and the municipal building, their shadow. Cole took a breath that shook, and then seemed to tuck everything back where she kept it. We have minutes, maybe. Name the address. Anna named her mother's street. The syllables tasted like Christmas and funerals. We're not going there, Cole said, swinging wide. We're going near there. Vance will expect us to step on the sacred stones. We will step on the ones beside them. They cut through neighborhoods that had learned to sleep through sirens. Porch lights made halos of bugs. A dog barked at a thing it would forget by morning. Near the end of their orbit, Cole killed the engine and coasted to a stop half a block from the house that had birthed more memories than it knew what to do with. We split, she said. I'll pull Vance to the intersection. You get in. Get the recorder. Get out. Do not linger. Do not turn on lights. Promise me. Anna nodded. Michael swallowed. Promise. Cole squeezed Anna's shoulder, and for a second, there was nothing tactical. Your father didn't vanish because he was weak. He vanished because he was stubborn in a world that punishes that. Be stubborn, smarter. She was gone, a gray wink into gray rain. They moved along hedges, and under the lip of a stone, the house loomed, equal parts refuge and accusation. Anna knew the squeaks and the softball. She slid a credit card under the weather-stripped back door and felt the catch. Inside, the dark had different shapes because it remembered different years. Third riser. Fingers found the nail that wasn't the head that turned with a tiny resistance. The riser lifted. Her hand closed around a small tin box that once held tea. Inside, a dog-eared microcassette recorder, 2 spare batteries wrapped in a rubber bag, and a note in her mother's tidy cursive. If you ever come for this, Anna, I didn't throw it out because I didn't know how to throw out your father without throwing out you. Love, Mom. Her breath. She took the recorder and the batteries and slid the tin back into the hole and the riser back into place. Because rituals matter. Michael's hand brushed her shoulder. Time's up. They slid back into the night. Across the street, headlights painted the wet like a second storm. Cole's car moved to block them, stopped at the intersection in a posture of negotiation. 2 more vehicles drifted in from opposite angles. One black, one the nondescript beige that might as well be a uniform. Figures got out. Words were exchanged that belonged to people who said words to stall their go. Michael. In the car, rain drummed a fugue on the roof while Anna slid the cassette into the recorder with the care of a person lighting a fuse for warmth rather than explode. She pressed play. Static rolled like a tide across pebbles. Then a voice, thinner for time and tape, filled it was their father's, tired and deliberate. If you are hearing me, then I failed to keep the schedule I promised myself. I am sorry. Forgiveness is a word that should never be asked for, but always offered. I have 3 things to tell you. The first is the name I could not write, the person who gave the order to cut me. The second is where the document is that can't be argued, and why I could keep it and I could not keep you. The third is the thing you will not want. The tape clicked softly, old mechanisms clearing their throats. Anna held her breath as if air would push the words away. The name, Richard Hale said, and the syllables came next, like a stone dropped into a quiet pond, sending rings into the world they thought they knew. The name is Leland Grant. The syllables hit the cramped car like hailstones. Michael's knuckles went white. Anna stared through the rain-shined windshield where, half a block away, Agent Cole's sedan idled intersection, a wedge of gray against deeper gray. 2 other cars faced her like wolves deciding which flanked. Grant, Michael said, tasting like something. The state development, the billboards, the charity, Northridge Consulting. He owns the shell, or used to. On the tape, their father kept going, each word clipped to fit more truth into less time. Grant told the state attorney's office to cut me loose. He was the power behind the file. When I stopped being useful, I became inconvenient. He gave the go-ahead to take me. The men who grabbed me answered to Doyle, but Doyle answered to Grant. Lightning stitched the sky. In the block beyond Cole, silhouettes shifted. Leland Grant. The name turned the storm inside Anna's chest into something with a target. The second thing, Richard said, is where the one document lives that 1,000 lies can't smother. You've seen ledgers and transfers. They can call those doctored. You've seen photos. They can call those staged. What they can't bury is a recording made by a man who already knew he'd been betrayed. Doyle called it his insurance. He never knew Claire made a copy. Anna's fingers tightened on the recorder so hard the plastic sang. She could see Claire's handwriting on the back of a photograph. "To R, forever yours, Claire," as if the loops had been waiting for this very sentence. "It's not in a bank," Richard went on. "If you found this, you've already learned how banks can belong to them. I put it in a place that remembers us and doesn't care who we are. Anna, it's in the old oak tree in the backyard. The one you climbed when you were 8 and I told you not to because you'd break your arm and you broke it anyway and we laughed at the cast. There's a metal capsule wedged in a heartwood cavity I carved with. I told your mother was for birdhouses. It's sealed in resin and wrapped in. The inner latch opens with the brass key you'll find taped on the top tray. If you found the key, you found this. If you found this, then you know the third thing." Anna felt the air slip. In the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights turned slowly into the street, as if trying not to look like a hunter. "The third thing," the tape said, and Richard's voice dropped into that careful register he used when a lesson hurt, "is the one that will make you hate me before you forgive me, if you ever do. Anna, Claire is your mother. I am your father, but the woman who birthed you was Claire Whitmore. Your mother, Evelyn, raised you, and raising is the truest form of being, but blood makes certain fires hard to fight. Michael, I am your father too. You are full brother and sister in all the ways that count. There is no math that undoes that. I kept the secret because I told myself it protected you. I was going to tell you. Forgive me for being too late. The car was suddenly too small. The rain seemed not to be outside at all, but inside, a living thing crawling over Anna's skin. Images crashed into each other, her mother's hand smoothing her hair during fevers, Claire's name scrawled in ink that had learned the shape of Richard's life. The way her face in certain photos looked not like her mother's, but like the blurred outline of a woman she had almost built a guilty. Michael's voice came rough, unpracticed. "Anna?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. There was no word for the way the ground fell and then held, for the way a person could be both daughter and both grieving and relieved. Relieved because something had finally snapped into place that made the ache make sense. Outside, at the intersection, Agent Cole flicked her headlights once, twice. Signal, warning, both. 2 men stepped from the tan sedan. One had the posture of a man with all his bones. The other carried his shoulders like he'd borrowed them. The black SUV rolled closer as if to listen. Richard's voice returned, the edges softer now, regret feathering the vowels. "If I don't make it, if this tape is my last voice to you, know that I loved you both clean. Not the kind of clean that means easy. The kind of clean that means I would have burned down a city to keep you from harm. I could not burn it down, so I learned its alleys. Use what I have left you. Find Harold at the college if you have to. He is a kind man who knows where the quiet is. And if you must trade your safety for truth, trade carefully. Truth is heavier than it looks." The tape clicked and ran into a stretch of blank hiss like wind. Anna let it spool and the recorder thunked into silence. Michael's hand hovered between wanting to reach for and knowing he didn't get to put his hand where he hadn't yet. He found her shoulder. "We get the capsule," he said simply. "We get the proof. We make it mean something." She nodded. The motion felt like consent to more than a plan. It felt like choosing to carry everything she now was. At the intersection, a flash of movement. Cole stepping out, palms up, body language that said she was talking, unthinking. The men's heads tipped. Another set of headlights turned in from the far end, slow and too quiet. The scar on the driver's cheek caught a street lamp like a mirror. "Owen, go now." She tucked the recorder inside her jacket, slid low in the seat, and eased the car from the curb with the timid confidence of a neighbor out to check a sump. Vance's SUV paused at the cross street. Attention was car. If he registered a gray sedan pulling off near the far corner, he didn't. They slipped 3 streets over, circled behind their own house, and ghosted into the alley that fed the back fence. The oak rising from the yard was a black muscle against the sky, its topmost branches catching rain and letting it go as if deciding. The backyard gate was the kind that squeaked no matter how much oil you promised it. Anna lifted it off the hinge pin an inch and let it swing like a lifted quiet. She stood under the oak and pressed her palm to bark that had been home and background and lecture blessing. "You kept him safe," she whispered, ridiculous and true. "Keep us now." Michael worked the small flashlight from his pocket and cupped it so the beam was a thumbprint. "Where?" he asked. "About shoulder height. Facing the house. Just left of center." He bragged about centering things that didn't want to be centered. They searched for the faint elliptical scar of old drilling. It had blended over years into bark whorls, but the eye remembers what the eye loves. Anna found it, near a knot that had once looked like a rabbit to her when she was 5. She slipped the tip of a screwdriver into the seam and pried. Bark came away reluctantly, revealing resin that gleamed like amber. Through it, dark metal curved, a capsule the size of a man's palm. Michael dug from the side with the patience of a man who has learned not to let anger. Resin chipped. The capsule shifted. He levered it free and wrapped it in the hem of his shirt to mute the scrape. Anna's lungs remembered to breathe. Footsteps on wet pavement. Voices at the end of the... Not neighbors. The sound didn't carry the aimless quality of people deciding what. It carried the aim of men who believed the night belonged to them. Got it, Till whispered. Anna took the capsule. A neat hole in one end. A keyhole. The brass key. Top tray in the cabin box, her father had said. Except the cabin box had been raided, and they'd fled with it. She pictured her hands scooping microfilm. The way panic makes a person choose what they can carry and leave what they can't see. Check. Michael slid the metal box from his backpack, fingers diving under the top tray and finding tape where tape had been placed by hands that always planned. A small brass key came free, cold as a truth that had been waiting. He dropped it. A whine of tires at the front of the house. Doors. Voices now in two keys. Vance's easy drawl and someone else's officious spray of words. Coles? Her heart thundered so loud it filled the spaces between syllables. Anna fit the key and turned. The lock sighed open like a man deciding to confess. Inside, oilcloth, wrapped smooth and tied with thread from an era when thread said care. She unfolded it and found a compact digital recorder, the kind that looked like a stick of gum and a small... The card case held an SD card, 2 micro SD, and a folded index card with Claire's handwriting. Copy A, copy B, copy C. If you're using C, I'm sorry. Later, Michael whispered. They resealed everything as best as shaking hands can reseal. Voices moved around the house, front, side, then the dead space between. A flashlight beam ticked along the inside of the kitchen. Cole's car engine revved. A horn blared. Someone swore. Fence! Through the neighbor's yard. They moved along the shadow of the garage and into the narrow throat between the fence and the stunted hedge that had survived their childhoods by default. At the corner, Michael pressed himself flat and peered. The alley mouths on both ends glittered with rain, and he turned to Anne and opened his mouth to say what he thought his body. The back door of the house clicked open. Don't bother the hedge. It never liked you. It's not going to start now. Harold, the librarian, stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a raincoat the color of weak tea and the expression of a man who had decided the story was being shelved incorrectly. He lifted one hand. Agent Cole called me 3 minutes ago. She advised me to come and invent an emergency with her name in it. I prefer to invent kindness. Quickly, please. They slid inside. The kitchen smelled like coffee, as memory rather than as fact. I don't... How... Anna began. Harold lifted the grocery bag in his other hand. It rattled with batteries and something that looked like an external hard drive sealed in a plastic container. Your father once helped me fix the microfiche when the campus budget couldn't stretch to parts, he said simply. I thought he was a man who kept receipts for... This seemed like a moment to repay one. Michael shut the door and twisted the... They're in the front. Vance, others. Then we use the back, Harold said, as if discussing a card catalog. Your mother left the basement windows able to open, which is an uncommon mercy. The storm drains under the cul-de-sac meet behind the park. I will lead you to the point where my shoes will stop being jokes and start being problems. Harold, Anna said, throat thick, you don't have to... Of course I don't, he said. Most of the best things I do are things nobody asked me to do. He set the bag down, eyes catching on the oilcloth bundle. The corner of his mouth tilted up. Ah, he said softly, an argument no one can talk over. They ghosted down the basement stairs. The risers creaked in a language they'd always spoken. Anna translated each complaint into a step that put weight where silence still lived. At the bottom, Harold leaned on a window well, worked 2 latches, and lifted. They belly-crawled into the ribbon of space between house and earth. Rain muttered on the metal grate above. Earth gave up its cool in the face of their heat. Michael lifted the grate slot by slot and set it down on grass as if noise were a currency he had none of. They slid into the drainage ditch that had served as their summer expedition route to the park. Water ran shin-deep, cold and insistent. Harold led. Steps clever. Umbrella collapsed under one arm like a saber he hadn't been permitted. Behind them, voices. A beam of light combed the yard. Back! Someone barked. They're in the back! They crouched lower, became shadows inside wetter. The ditch widened, flattened, carried them under a culvert where sound became an animal. At the far end, the grate had rusted through in just enough places to let 3 humans find a shape through. Harold squeezed out and put his back to breath visible in small puffs. Now, he said, eyes on the street where no one looked at the ditch because people prefer to believe water minds its own business. Where to? The only place with enough driven air and old plugs to make dead tech sing. Your library. Harold's smile was fleeting and fierce. Yes, he said. It's time for the stacks to talk. They moved like rumor toward campus. Twice they heard engines roll slow, predators deciding whether to pounce or to wait for exhaustion. Once, a neighbor's porch light drilled them and withdrew. The old idea that light is safety dies hard and raw. At the back door of the library, Harold produced a key the size of a promise. I still believe in locks, he said. I just don't worship them. Inside, the building sighed around them. Harold took them not to the public microfilm room this time, but to a tiny office lined with wire racks and machines that had refused to learn new forms. VCR decks, reel-to-reels, a tape cleaner with a brush head like a tiny salon. He set the grocery bag down and produced a small, battered Olympus the same model as the one in Oak's capsule. Collected over the years, because you never know whose voice will be worth hearing later. Anna opened the oil. She lifted Claire's labeled cards with care and slotted copy A into the Harold provided power to, with an adapter that had likely outlived multiple grant cycles. The screen flickered, found the file list, and displayed a date that felt like a fossil that still had meat on it. She pressed play. Sound bloomed, the clink of glass, the plush hush of crowd talk, the smear of a piano doing something expensive, and a woman's breath near the microphone. Claire's, if love could be stored in waveform. Then Doyle, nasal, and no. Leland might. If you're going to tell a man truth sets him free in a room like this, at least make sure the check clears first. A deeper of the kind built to carry in banquet and caucus rooms chuckled. The check clears before the photo, and the photo before the ribbon. That's the liturgy. We keep faith with ice clip. A third voice cut in, the state senator who had grown into something worse. And in keeping faith with the form, Northridge will receive the first phase by Friday. No overruns, no delays. If the education grants cry, we'll tell them to pray harder. Polite laugh. Claire inhaled, a small startled sound she smothered. The recorder crackled against fabric as if a hand had tightened where it shouldn't. Doyle again. Lower now. The tone men use when they know their words will come back for. And our friend at the attorney's office? Grant. Curated. He likes to be useful. When he stops, he'll like retirement better than scandal. We all do. I've never met a man who preferred flames to the quiet. A waitress approached on the recording, asking if anyone wanted more champagne. Footsteps. The sound shifted like bodies repositioning for a camera. Then Richard's voice, a ghost in his own evidence, speaking to someone. Careful, he said. Too near. Claire whispered back. If we don't get words, we at least get music. People choose masks over mirrors. They talk to their masks. Michael's hand found the back of a chair and held on. Anna felt her heart try to crawl up her throat. In 2 minutes, the recorder had captured more crime than a year of editorial. Names, methods, enough to hang men if hanging were still done with rope instead of withdrawal of invitation. Harold was the one. Oh, not quite triumph, not quite sorrow. That will argue. The office door rattled. Anna's blood froze and then learned to move again. Harold lifted a finger, quiet, and crossed to the door on feet that had learned how to be invisible in Kingdom. He peered through the peephole and relaxed. Cole. He opened. Agent Cole stepped in dripping rain and fury, swept the room with her eyes, and then fixed on the record. She closed the door behind her and set her back to it. Good, she said. You found it. You sent Harold, Anna said. I asked him to choose decency. He always does. Cole jerked her chin at the recorder. That file is dynamite, but it's useless if we don't get it past the people who control the fuses. Media? Some, Cole said, but this kind of thing dies in rooms with wood paneling if you give it to the wrong paper. We need a judge who hates being made a fool of and a federal office that still remembers what the word interstate means. This cross-state line's the second those shell companies started washing money out of ours, but before any of that, we need to survive the next hour. She turned the office lights off. The glow from the recorder screen painted their faces the color of aquarium water. Vance? Harold asked. Circling. He put eyes on the alley. He'll think you came here because you've already taught him you love this place. He hates predictability unless it lets him choreograph, so we let him choreograph wrong. How? Michael. Cole smiled without humor. By doing the third thing, instead of the... Anna felt a laugh shove against her ribs, half hysteria, half relief. My father would like that. We ghost out the front as if we're headed to the car, Cole said. We let him see a shape that looks like us. Harold, do you own a hat big enough to pass for theatrical? I own 6, Harold said. Good. You two. She nodded at Anna and take the service corridor to the theater. There's a catwalk above the stage that leads to a maintenance ladder and out over the reception. The donor dinner tonight just ended early because of the storm. The loading dock will be full of catering trucks. You'll look like you belong because everyone always looks like they belong when a cart. I'll draw Vance. Meet me at the south parking lot under the biology building in 8 minutes. If you're not there in 10, I assume you're dead or we need a new plan. Choose not dead. Harold rummaged in a closet and produced a hat that had once wanted to be on a... He popped it on his... I'll be theater, he said. They moved. Anna pocketed the SD cards and the Oaks record, tucking them against her underlay, as if her bones could guard them. Michael took the metal capsule itself because tangible things anchor a person. He needed anchoring. Cole checked her pistol, tucked her hair behind her ear like she was undoing more than water, and then opened the door to a night that was now full of plot. In the hallway, their feet found rhythm. Harold peeled off toward the front lobby, hat angled, coat swung, book cart commandeered with a wizard's aplomb. Cole ghosted toward the side exit, one hand already on her phone, her voice ready to perform outrage or heartbreak or a mixture of both. Anna and Michael slipped into the service corridor and followed the smell of dust and paint. The catwalk protested their weight because catwalks are drama queens. Below, the empty stage held ghost light like a candle on. At the far end, the maintenance ladder presented it. They climbed, swung onto a platform, slid through a door that believed in staff as a religion, and found themselves above the loading dock where carts, crates, and humans negotiated hierarchy. They belonged. They claimed a steel trolley and loaded it with an empty crate and a coil of cable. No one looked at them because looking meant someone might ask you to help, and no one wanted that. In the biology building's south lot was a bowl that collected night. Cole's sedan glided into a space and idled. She didn't look at them when they slid into the back seat. She just pulled away like a sentence finding its verb. Vance? Michael asked. Distracted, Cole said. Temporarily. Harold's hat is doing some of the Lord's work. Anna held the recorder as if it might leap. Claire's handwriting on the index card felt like a touch from a life that had been denied sunlight. We have enough, she said, not quite believing it and also believing it with her whole beleaguered being. We have enough to scare them, Cole said, which is not the same as enough to beat them. But fear makes people stupid. Stupid makes mistakes. Mistakes leave prints. Where to? Out of county, Cole said. A judge in Cedar Falls who once threw out a case of mine because I cut a corner. He'll listen because he knows I hate being embarrassed more than I hate being wrong. And then, feds. I have one contact who still returns my calls for the right reason. The wipers marked time. The campus slid into highway, and then into the kind of road that knows a car is. Anna watched the recorder's tiny screen scroll back to the file list. It timed out. She thought of Evelyn, Mom, putting that note in the riser. I didn't know how to throw out your father without throwing out you. She thought of Claire, whispering near a microphone, music in a mouth that had learned bravery the hard way. She thought of Richard, the man who had dug a hole in a tree so the world would have something it couldn't lie its way. Yeah, I'm still your sister. He didn't look at her, didn't need to. Yeah, and in that syllable there was a whole childhood of scraped knees and kicks under tables and flash blankets. Always. They drove, the capsule cold in Michael's lap like a planet, the tape hot against Anna's side like a star. Behind them, a car pulled onto the highway and kept a courteous distance for 3 long miles. Then 2 more joined. Courtesy can be camouflage. Cole's eyes moved in the rear view without moving. Time to argue, she said, and the car took the next exit as if it had come to the decision on its own. The rain had stopped by the time they reached Cedar Falls, but the storm still lived in the streets. Branches down, windows beaded, air swollen with the smell of wet earth. Cole drove with the urgency of someone who knew minutes mattered. Every traffic light another gamble. Anna clutched the Oaks recorder against her chest. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten a handful of Harold's emergency crackers. All she felt was the steady pulse of her father's voice, still echoing inside her. Leland Grant, Claire is your mother. Protect each. The courthouse rose from the center of town like something carved out of another century. Columns streaked with rain, its stone shoulders hunched as if under invisible. Cole parked at the side entrance. Judge Whitaker, she said, looking at them with eyes that dared them to. He hates being lied to, which means we have one chance to get this right. No drama, no speeches, just proof. Michael grunted, shoving the capsule deeper into his backpack. I think we've had enough drama for one lifetime. Inside, the courthouse smelled of dust and varnish. Cole led them up a narrow staircase to a chamber that was smaller than they expected, lined with books older than any of them. Behind a desk piled with papers, Judge Whitaker looked up, his glasses low on his nose. Cole, he said flatly, it's midnight. If this is another half-baked attempt to... His gaze shifted to Anna and Michael. Wet, worn, eyes hollow but burning. He stopped. This isn't half-baked, Cole said. She set the recorder on his desk, and voices filled the room. The gala, Doyle's sarcasm, Grant's command, the senator's sneer, Richard's warning to Claire, Claire's whisper defiant. Whitaker sat back, expression unchanged, but his hand tightened on the arm. When the tape ended, the silence rang louder than thunder. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Then louder, "Do you have copies?" "3," Anna said. "And ledgers? Photos? Enough to bury them if the world still cares about truth." Whitaker leaned forward, eyes sharp now. "The world doesn't care, but the law does sometimes, when forced. This will force it." Before he could say more, the chamber door burst open. Owen Vance stepped inside, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. His scar caught the desk lamp, cutting a line across his smile. "Evening, Judge," Vance drawled. "Sorry to intrude. Family matter." Michael sprang up, fists clenched. Cole drew her gun, but Vance was faster, his weapon already out, leveled. Now, he said smooth. "Let's not ruin the furniture. Hand me the capsule and no one bleeds on the judge's." Anna stood slowly, heart hammering. She looked at Whitaker, at the recorder, at Vance's gun. She heard her father's voice again. "Sometimes the only way to win is not to play by their rules." She lifted the recorder, then hurled it straight at the window. Glass shattered. The device tumbled into the night air, clattering onto the courthouse steps below. "No!" Vance lunged, shoving past Mike. In that heartbeat, Cole fired. The shot rang like judgment. Vance staggered back, shock etched on his face. His gun clattered. He collapsed, scarred cheek turned toward the ceiling, as if the world had finally silenced. The 2 men behind him froze. Whitaker's voice thundered like a gavel. "You set foot here again, and I'll see you rot before a jury." They hesitated, then bolted into the hall. Michael rushed to the broken window, looking down at the recorder. A small crowd had already gathered on the steps, locals drawn by the curiosity. 1 man bent, picked it up, fiddled, then pressed play. Voices spilled into the night. The gala, Doyle, Grant, the senator, Claire, Richard, every word carrying on the cool night air, witnessed not by 1 judge, but by 20 ordinary citizens. Anna's knees buckled with relief. "It's out," she whispered. "It's finally out." The days that followed blurred into headlines and hearing. Corruption scandal erupts across state line. Senator under investigation. Charity fraud exposed. Leland Grant denied everything, called the recordings fabricated, but each denial cracked under the weight of ledger entries, photographs, bank transfers. Richard Hale's name surfaced too, not as a traitor, not as a runaway informant who had risked everything. For the first time in 15 years, Anna and Michael heard strangers speak his name with respect, but respect did not erase law. Their father was still, Claire was still dead. Evelyn, the woman who had raised Anna as her own, remained a ghost in her silence. On a gray morning, Anna and Michael returned to the old oak tree. The fire-damaged house still smelled of smoke, but the tree stood strong, bark-scarred but alive. Anna pressed her hand against it, eyes closed. "We know now," she whispered, "and we'll keep knowing. For you." Michael set down the metal capsule, empty now but still heavy. "He wanted us to carry it together. Guess we will." They stood in silence, siblings bound by blood, by lies, by truth, by the stubborn love of a father who had vanished but never stopped fighting. And for the first time in years, Anna felt something close to, not because the world was safe, it never would be, but because the secrets no longer. The wind moved through the branches, a low whisper that almost sounded like Richard Hale. "Protected." Anna turned to Michael, and this time when she smiled, her eyes. "Did you enjoy this story? To like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Enjoy, and comment below about your experience listening to this story.